So I will start recording. Cool. Hi guys, welcome along to another episode of YAC Yarns. My name's Chelsea. I'm the Deputy Chair of the CDHB Youth Advisory Council. Welcome to those of you that are new and joining us tonight. For those of you that don't know, YAC Yarns is a conversation series that we're hosting by the CDHB Youth Advisory Council, where we talk to professionals across the sector about health-related topics for young people. Just a little kind of housekeeping, that we will be keeping an eye on the live stream, so if you have got any other questions that you haven't already sent through to us, feel free to ask them and we'll keep an eye out on that. And we are recording, so we'll be uploading the recording later on in the week if you miss this or we're watching it later on. Since there's someone else on the screen, I'll introduce Letitia from Asthma Respiratory Foundation New Zealand. Thanks so much for joining us.
Chelsea.
I'll let you kind of kick off by maybe introducing yourself and letting them know a bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am the Chief Executive of the Asthma Respiratory Foundation for New Zealand. And basically we are the leading national organisation around education around that respiratory space. So not just asthma, but COPD or bronchiectasis, anything lung related. And we provide also the national guidelines on things like asthma and COPD. So we're all about good lung health.
Awesome. So we kind of said our topic tonight was e-cigarettes and vaping. So we thought we'd probably kick off with a bit of a general question about what are e-cigarettes or vapes?
Yeah, and I saw some of the the questions that you'd sent through, and I guess first I just really wanted to say that during this pandemic and this COVID, I think the thought of having anything like a vaping product going into your healthy lungs, if you aren't a current smoker, wanting to quit and use them for that it's just not a good idea. So I'm going to say that right out now, right at the beginning. Okay. Yeah. So what is vaping or e-cigarettes? Basically, they're battery-powered devices that have an e-liquid in them, which is heated at very high temperatures that someone then inhales and then exhales. And the temperatures that they're heated at can be really, really hot. They're around 200, 250 degrees
wow.
Celsius. So that's what they are in a nutshell. It's a liquid that is put into an aerosol, which is then vaped, and they can also be called ENDS products, ENDS, which is electronic nicotine delivery systems. That's another name, but yeah. Vapes, e-cigarettes, ENDS, whatever you want to call them, they're the same sort of thing.
Awesome. And so you kind of just mentioned before then about the liquid. So someone had asked, what is in a vape? Yeah, I mean, a great question because a lot of people probably don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right, Chelsea. And actually, some people just think that, it's flavoured water, which they aren't. So there's three main ingredients in a vape, and that is your flavours, your solvents and your sweeteners, basically. And of course we hear a lot about the flavours. So your solvents are your vegetable glycerine, which is a plant extract, so natural oil plant extract, and your propylene glycol, which is the synthetic version. And those are the products that make those big vape clouds that you see out there. And then the flavours can range from, actually now at last count, there's over 15,000 vape flavours on the market.
Wow. That's a lot.
We started getting involved in the vape space and wanting to get policy and get this industry regulated. That was only maybe 2017. There were 4,000 flavours.
Wow.
So we're talking 3 years. There's a lot more flavours available now.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the sweeteners, which are mainly sucralose or the other, which is not as commonly used as the ethyl methyl, but all of these products, especially like the vegetable glycerine, the propylene glycol, are used in beauty products and things like that as well.
Wow, yeah, that's and really massive to see, like, you're talking a couple of years difference and the amount of like flavours that are on offer now. That's crazy.
But of course now with the new, the regulations and the amendment bill coming into place, those will be restricted into specialist vape shops, but specialist vape shops will obviously still be able to supply all those products.
Wow.
All those flavours.
So another question that we had come through was, how does a vape work? So like, how do they work?
Yeah, basically there's a lot of different vapes or e-cigarettes on the market. As you can see, there's ones which have like the big cartridges, and then you've got the really small ones like the dual, vapes, which are almost look like a USB that you plug in. So there's a wide range, but they all have to heat at very high temperatures to produce this exhaled vaporized product, basically. And if you can look at some of the different ones on our website, which is Don't Get Sucked In, www.don'tgetsuckedin.co.nz. That tells you a list of sort of the different ones out there and breaks them down into what the heated coil is, and then the e-liquid, and the mouthpiece and different things. But there's so many on the market now. The reality is that I think the last projection was that by 2027, the industry for vaping and e-cigarettes was going to be worth about $67 billion.
Wow, that's huge. And I was really, interesting you mentioned the website, because I had a little look at it previously before tonight. Really awesome website. So we'll chuck that up on our Facebook page as well for people to check that out, because that's a really cool resource to go have a look at and learn more. I thought it was really well done. But another question we kind of had was, what is the legal age to vape, or maybe even just to buy vaping products in New Zealand?
Yep, so here in New Zealand it's 18, and also if you go online then it's 18. You just have to tick the box that you're over 18, but that's the online stuff. So yeah, here it's 18 in New Zealand.
Oh, a kind of big generic question came through, was, is vaping safe?
Yeah, well, I have to say that is vaping safe? They'll say it's safer than cigarettes, combustible traditional cigarettes, and quite possibly it probably is. In all fairness, we still don't have the long-term information, but if you're comparing it to cigarettes, which are like one of our biggest known killers out there, then yes, it's safe for them. But should you take up vaping if you not want to use it as a quick device? No, because it damages the lungs, it has cardiovascular effects, and it is not safe, and it does harm your lungs. So if I can get that through to people, it's definitely important. And especially now, right? We're in the middle of a COVID pandemic, as I said before. Yeah. Why would you want to take up something like this that damages your lungs? Because basically, when you are inhaling these products and these solvents, then your white blood cells and the tissues in your lungs are basically going to start attacking those. And constantly, if you're doing it, you're going to get that inflammation, lung inflammation coming through. So I think that most people would get that. It sort of makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess just to reiterate there, so I guess you've covered it, but we'll just because someone specifically asked was, what is the impact of vapes on young people's health? So that was it's part of the same question, but maybe just to reiterate the point. So
I guess that not all vaping products have nicotine in them. You can get zero nicotine, e-vaping liquids and e-cigarettes, but one of the big issues is, and it's great that we're going to have regulations, is that nicotine, we know, especially for young people, affects the developing brain. There's been numerous studies around insomnia and mood, and it doesn't help with concentration. So there's enough data out there talking about nicotine and nicotine addiction. So one of the key things, and why, as I said, these regulations will be good, is because that often things that said there was zero nicotine actually have nicotine in them. And so that's not very helpful as well. So we want to make sure that for young people, they're not going to become addicted to another product, which is nicotine, basically, which isn't good for the developing brain.
That's interesting, because you hear about, I guess, the smoking impacts, but you don't necessarily hear about the vaping, so that's really interesting to hear. I guess another kind of question that came through was, someone was talking about secondhand vape. Can you be impacted by secondhand vape, or is it just person that uses like vapes themselves that can be impacted?
Yeah, no, definitely secondhand vape, certainly from, you know, the area we're working in around asthma, it can exacerbate asthma symptoms and having attacks if you're exposed to secondhand vape, which sort of makes sense. You know, often we know with even cigarettes, secondhand smoke, that having asthma attacks can be correlated with that as well. So that is out there. So secondhand vape, especially if you have got already a compromised respiratory system or something like asthma or you know, COPD, then that isn't going to be healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's also kind of good to know because, yeah, again, I think some people kind of go down the track of it's flavoured water, so
Yeah.
how could they be impacted by secondhand flavoured water? So that's also a really good point to make. You kind of referred to it before, but someone did ask, are e-cigarettes an alternative to smoking?
Yeah, it's interesting. The best papers have shown that if you're wanting to give up cigarette smoking and you are a smoker, then using a e-cigarette or a vaping product may be right for you, but you still need that that behavioural support and that wraparound service that comes with things like, you know, Quitline, or with your local healthcare provider or your Māori health provider. You need to have that behavioural support as well. Going in and just picking up a vape to quit smoking, there's papers certainly lacking in that area. The best way to quit smoking that's been shown with using vape has been because they've had intense behavioural support. And I think that people just, it's been one of our bugbears that, you know, when you go into a vape shop, if it is actually introduced as a product to quit smoking, then they should be talking about how that information is going to be given to the consumer at point of care. You know, are they going to be given all the information around Quitline? Are they going to say, well, you need to be, you know, ringing up and checking in and have the app supports and all those sorts of things? Yeah. Rather than just buying something like a vape. Oh, this will stop me from smoking. And of course, one of the biggest thing is that actually dual using is a huge problem. So often people will smoke their cigarettes, but they'll also vape. And that's actually worse for you than even just cigarette smoking.
Oh.
Because actually there's been numerous papers out, and when I presented to the Health Select Committee on this, I supplied them with those papers saying that actually dual smoking and dual vaping and smoking is not good for you. So yeah, it's not the magic bullet, but it may be something that works for some people.
Yeah. And we had a couple of questions that are a bit more specific. And again, you kind of reiterated it before, but I'll just ask it again for the person that did ask the question. Someone had asked, does like vapes or e-cigarettes impact asthma? So this young person had asthma and was kind of like thinking, will it impact their asthma if they use vapes?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend if you have asthma being around vapes, or, you know, if there's party with lots of, because basically this solvent, it's not just flavoured water that's in that, you know, exhaled humectant, it's other products as well. And so we wouldn't recommend it if you are an asthmatic to be in that situation.
Yeah. Another question that kind of came through from a young person was they've been told that vaping is better than drinking or taking drugs. Is that true?
I think when we start getting into a really tricky area where we're comparing different things better than other things, right, Chelsea?
Yeah.
No, I mean, all we can say is, and it's interesting, this whole, I think, perception that it's safe really stemmed from this whole 95% safer than smoking. And I would really want people to drill down on where that came from, because it came from a paper by Nut et al. Out of the Public Health in the UK, and they were talking, basically it's a modelling paper. It's not based on scientific evidence. It's modelling, and you would understand modelling papers, and I'm sure lots of people who are listening to this understand what modelling is. Yeah. And the limitations in that even say that this is lacking evidence.
Wow.
95% safer just sounded great, and it came out there. But it's not based on scientific evidence, you know, it's crazy. So I would really like to dispel that myth and say it's probably safer than smoking, but 95% no. No.
Well, that's really interesting because, yeah, a lot you do. There's like, you know, I guess in some certain, when you study certain things at uni, you do get told about like certain kind of theories that came about through a paper that actually wasn't accurate, but everything's been based off that theory since. So it's interesting that that's the same kind of here with vaping in terms of the 95%. Another question that came through was around peer pressure. So someone had wrote in and said that at high school they've got like a group of friends that use vapes and e-cigarettes and are told that they should also be using one because it's the cool thing to do, but they don't want to. And I guess the advice was, how would you go about saying that you don't want to use one to avoid the peer pressure?
Yeah, that's true, and I think you're right. You know, they are quite popular. We saw a recent study come out of AUT, which Dr. Somner Captain actually just produced, talking about the visual vape clouds being very attractive to youth in the marketing and advertising. We know that this has had a huge marketing and advertising spin put on it because it's the same playbook that cigarettes, of course, used to use. Great colours, you know, you've got all these wonderful devices. So, of course, some teenagers and youth will think this is a very cool thing to do. And I guess if you're in that situation, you know, perhaps now more than ever, you'd say, well, actually, you know what, I really want to keep my lungs healthy because we are in the middle of a pandemic that affects respiratory health. And I could probably say that, you know, we've got people wearing masks out there. We're talking to be 2 meters away and, you know, you want to vape something. And I am talking about people who aren't current smokers, you know, I'm talking about youth in these situations. Do you really want to be doing that and harming your lungs at this point in time or cleaning time, you know?
Yeah. And I guess another kind of question that came off the same kind of track as that was, it was talking about they are in a situation where their friends are using and they're thinking that they should be encouraging them to stop. What could you say? So that was kind of information about what you would say if you don't want to use them, but how could you encourage someone nicely to maybe not use e-cigarettes? Because obviously you can't force someone to change their behaviour, but how can someone best encourage that?
Yeah, I think it's just being informed. I mean, everyone, you know, we know youth experiment. We know that, you know, there's trends that go on and things like that, but just get informed. I think the problem has come that it's been perceived, as I said, as health, well, not harmful, and that it's flavoured water, but it's not. You know, do get informed about actually what goes in there and do look at the information that is out there, because there's enough out there now showing that it does cause harm. And I think that it's being informed and educated. I mean, at the end of the day, people have to make their own decisions, and, you know, peer pressure is hard. You can go onto the website. We've got a little bit about peer pressure on that as well. But I think being informed and just probably saying at this point in time that you just really want to have nice, healthy lungs, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Before you were kind of talking about the regulations. Are you able to give a little bit more information about what that means in terms of like regulations?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to slowly be phased in, but the timelines, I think I've got the timelines here that we've got coming through at the moment for our regulations. So basically we know that it's that November this year we're going to have, you know, there's vaping not in any workplaces, etc. But the advertising, probably the big one in this space is that the advertising and sponsorship relating to vaping products is going to be prohibited, which is big because we know that that sponsorship of festivals and things like that, not that that's going on at the moment, but
no. But in the future,
often, in the future. So that's no longer going to be happening, and also that they're going to be start registering the, you know, what is a specialist vape shop, where they have to make sell 60% of their, you know, revenue is going to make them a specialist vape shop. That there's going to be limited, if you are in a specialist vape shop and it's like a dairy or petrol station, what can be sold. So those flavours are going to be limited to your mint and menthol and tobacco. So there's a few things coming in now which are slowly going to be phased in that are going to help hopefully stop the uptake of youth and that vaping in non-smokers. So we're pleased with some of those regulations that have been passed just before government broke up at the very last hour, which was
well, also that it got passed through in time.
Yeah, that's right. And as I said, they'll take a while to come through, but it's a good place to start, and it's good to have some regulation starting to come through rather than none, which we've seen has been a big problem for schools and teachers, you know, confiscating vaping products, etc., when there's been no real law around vaping.
Yeah. Well, we kind of, when we finish up our conversation, we've always got like one question that we'll ask our speakers, and it's, what is one thing that you would like young people to take away from this conversation tonight?
All right, if it was going to be one thing, I'd have to hold up our poster, look, Chelsea, which you've already alluded to. This is a good one. Yeah. Don't get sucked into right, heavy metal belongs in your ears, not in your lungs. No, don't get sucked in. Just be informed. You know, I mean, we're not saying, I mean, youth do experiment, but get informed. Vaping isn't healthy for your lungs. It's certainly not 95% safer. So just learn a little bit more about it and make an informed decision.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was really informative, really interesting, because, you know, I've learned some things tonight, and I'm sure many other people will do as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Chelsea.
We will put this recording up later in the week on our Facebook page, so keep an eye out. And tomorrow we'll be announcing a guest speaker for next week that we're really excited about, so keep your eyes and ears on that. But thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.